Hi, guys. This is Brooklyn, the creator, founder of Boo Boos, and we are here with the new mama group. And this is my dear friend, Amy Kelley. I met Amy through yoga, and she's an amazing prenatal yoga teacher. And when I met her, I absolutely fell in love with her because she's just the most kind and gentle human ever. And just an incredible mama, too. Like, so inspiring. So Amy is, on top of being a yoga instructor, is also childbirth expert and teacher, as well as a doula, and I'm sure a lot of other things. Like, you have so much going on. Is there anything else you want to add to my terrible intro?
Oh, I think that's good.
Okay, awesome. But yeah, so the main reason that I invited Amy on is just like she's such an incredible human, and she's handling the mamahood and running her business, and I'm in awe of you, and just like the way that you are so graceful about all of it and also so vulnerable it's amazing. And you can see she's feeding her sweet baby Louise right now. And it's just, you're doing it. Like, you do it all.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I want to start just by asking, like, tell us about your birth story and when you guys decided you wanted to get pregnant, what your pregnancy was like, your birth story, all of that.
Yeah. So we got married in like September of, well, it doesn't really matter, but around then the next January. So about, 5-6-ish months later, we were like, I think we're ready to try, and which I hate that word. We were ready to welcome a baby into our life.
Mm-hmm.
And it took a couple of months. I think initially we weren't probably really, I was just learning kind of the ins and outs of tracking my cycle and learning about, the body, and which is kind of, I'm a little bummed I didn't study that stuff sooner. I think we all, could learn a lot about, the female cycle and body and.
Right. Yeah. I just until a few weeks ago didn't even fully know when I menstruate, or when my actual ovulation was, and when menstruation. That's really bad that I have 2 kids and I don't know the days.
Well, and we're not taught in our, as young girls about it. So
yeah. Hi.
So, it, and whatever it was too, I had just also started my doula career that January. So I think I was under more stress too. But we got pregnant in July. I missed my period, or I got my period July 4th, and that was my last period. I was bummed I got it because I had to wear a swimsuit on 4th of July. But anyways, so then we were pregnant by the next month. And my pregnancy was pretty uneventful. I had a little bit of morning sickness, but not bad. And we pretty much, the only eventful thing is we were initially birthing at a birth center, and then we switched to a home birth around 28 weeks. Okay. So that was kind of a big decision we made, and my husband was totally on board with that. And then I was a week overdue, so I had her on my 41st week, April 21st, 2018. And we had her in our apartment at home with my birth. My birth team was my midwife. My sister was there. She at the time had 4 kids. My husband obviously was there, my doula, Alicia, and then we had a birth photographer as well. Yeah.
What made you want to go, change from the birth center to home?
I think I was putting it off. I I was thinking about it earlier on in my pregnancy, but I just was like, no, it's fine. The birth center is an amazing option, and it's like 7 minutes from our apartment. But then I felt something in me just holding back, and I was like, I need to at least explore it.
Yeah.
So we just interviewed one midwife, and I knew her from Bluma, actually. So then we both were like, we don't need to interview anyone else. And she had availability. So
Awesome. So when you went from the birth center to home, you had to get new midwife care and everything, right?
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And did that feel okay?
Yeah, it was pretty cohesive. I felt, I mean, I'm a really sensitive person, so it was hard for me to say goodbye to our prior midwives. But they were so understanding and supportive, and I go there now again for my well women care. So it's the relationship kind of has gone full circle again. So
Okay, yeah, because I feel like that even when we consider if we have more kids, I would love a home birth, but I'm like, gosh, I love my midwives.
yeah.
They were both girls were through the birth center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I feel like we're blessed in the metro because we have in Twin Cities, we have such amazing options. So.
Right. So how was your actual birth?
It was hard, the hardest thing I've ever done. If everyone else who was there, what you would ask them, when I watched the video, I was super calm. But going in, might have to follow you around. It's not like I felt out of control. But I just was really surprised by how painful it was. And it kind of so it started, yeah, you want to see? Hi. It started with like a tiny bit of spotting and then period cramps. And then they got stronger, and then pretty much like almost only a couple hours after what I would define as early labor contractions, they turned into active labor contractions.
Okay.
So I thought I was pretty far along. I mean, I had contractions about every 5 minutes apart, starting at noon. And then we eventually called the midwife around, I think, 3 or something. And she was there, I think, pretty quickly after, about an hour after. And then my sister arrived, I think, around 5. My doula had been there since 1 p.m. probably. But then when she got there, she's like, I can check you vaginally if you want. And I am so glad I had her check me, but I didn't ask to know because I was only a 2.
Oh.
After like 5 hours of 5 minutes apart. Yeah. So thankfully I didn't know what I was. Then they had me do kind of like a circuit of different moves and lunges and squats and stuff. And and then they let me get in the birthing tub, which was amazing. Oh my gosh. I know, like, as an educator, the water is just as effective as IV pain meds at relieving pain. And I can truly attest, like, I've never had IV pain meds, but the water was like just enough for me.
It's crazy. Like, I remember with the first getting out of the water and being like, no, put me right back. Like, the difference in pain was incredible. So can you tell me, because I think a lot of people like that I've been talking to recently are asking, like, what's the difference between the doula and the midwife? And like, when did your doula get there? Why did you call her first? At what point did you have the midwife? Like, in you being in that world, like, what's the biggest difference?
Yeah. So a doula is a labor support person for the whole family unit. So you and your partner, we usually join families about active labor-ish. Midwives, on the other hand, so doulas do a training, a weekend training usually. Midwives are trained medical professionals, so they do all of the appointments and medical things, and they catch the baby if you'd like. Sometimes partners are allowed to catch the babies in certain birthing scenarios. But the doula, the doula is someone you contact typically in active labor. And it's kind of it's someone you can call where you're like, okay, I think things are happening, I'm not exactly sure. And then your doula can kind of guide you like, yep, I think we should let the physician or midwife know. Or I think we can labor at home for a while before we kind of think about going to the birthing place. So I don't know if that kind of clears it up.
It does. That's a great explanation. And I wonder, like, as you're talking now, do you notice now, having gone through birth, a difference in your experience before as a doula and now? Like, I'm just thinking when you say that, even if I went through a training, I would still be like, you're having contractions, like, let's call them. I feel like I still wouldn't know. And I'm sure, I don't know. So tell me about how it was before and now.
Oh, yeah. And I think this is what you're getting at, and correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, so it is a like very unique situation because labor has a normal curve to it. Some people have really short labor, some people have really long, and then there's like, within the average range. Yeah. But every person has different early labor symptoms, and sometimes following our guidelines of like 5 minutes apart for 60 minutes for an hour, like sometimes people progress faster than others. So it is really tricky as a doula to like, okay, I think it's time to go in. Sometimes we go in too early, sometimes we go in too late, but usually, you want to tell them something?
What would you like to say? Do you want to tell us about your birth? Like, let me tell you all about it.
Usually we can tell by hearing a woman in labor.
Okay.
So, if she says I'm having contractions, 3 minutes apart, if I'm not with her, I would call her and listen as she experiences them. If she can talk through them, it's pretty early still. But if she's having to set the phone down and I hear her moaning and being really vocal, that's a pretty good sign she's, an active labor type. So
when you say that now, I'm like remembering my midwife saying like, let me listen to you. I was like, this is really weird.
Yeah.
That's
so I tell people like, call your provider, and if you're wondering, if you don't have a doula, like they'll tell you or give you advice, but as a doula, I was kind of underestimating how far along I was.
Okay.
And I was like, I think I'm fine. Like, I told my husband to stay at work, and my doula actually called my husband without me knowing and was like, we need to go home. And then when she got with us, she was like, I think we should at least call the midwife. And I was like, well, we don't need to yet. And I think I just didn't want people to be there longer than they needed to be, but that's what they do.
That's a real thing. Like, there's almost this like guilt and awareness of like, I don't want to inconvenience people during birth still. And it's like, you're having a baby, and that should be. I had the same thing where I was like, especially if it was the middle of the night, I was like, I don't want to call the midwife and have her come in.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for.
And I don't think that's uncommon. Like,
Yeah.
So many of my clients are like, oh, we didn't want to bother you. And I'm like, no, you're paying me to be on call for you all the time, you know?
Yeah.
Oh.
So how has your work changed since having Lise? Like, has it shifted how you doula?
Yeah, I think mostly it's been like a holistic kind of energy has shifted. I've felt just more confident having gone through the process, and it's not like I was faking it before as a doula, but now having felt contractions, I just feel my words are, to me, they can land in a different way because I've gone through it. And I've just had to be really careful to not, my birth was my birth, and that's not for everyone. And when I support people, I support all people. So I have to be really careful too, just with my own experience, to not let that shape someone else's experience.
Right.
So
yeah, that would be pretty challenging.
Yeah.
So as, I guess, on that same note, like as a childbirth educator and as a doula, what would you tell people that are considering using a doula? And what would you tell people either way, just like as they're ready to go into it?
What was the second part?
The second one was like, what's a piece of advice or something, piece of wisdom, knowledge for people going into birth that are getting ready to birth?
Yeah. So, and then what would you recommend or share with people thinking about a doula?
Yeah.
So hiring a doula, obviously I'm fully supportive and like recommend everyone get one, but I think the biggest thing is, we don't want birth to be a stressful experience, but there's naturally, certain hormones that increase when we are experiencing this situation. So I think having a doula can help keep the stress really low and help bring a lot of confidence to the partner and the birthing person and help everyone work really well together. I always recommend taking childbirth classes, but it's hard in the moment too to remember all that stuff. So having a doula, you have that just person right there to recommend things and suggest things, and partners can take a break or they can go get food. I think another thing is like sometimes partners think they can just marathon through, and it's like, this is a really intense experience for you too. So having support can be really helpful. And I always say there's a doula for everyone. So we have the highest number of doulas per capita in the Twin Cities.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your unique personality, there's a perfect fit for you. And there's a couple good resources on the internet. There's the doulamatch.net page, and the Twin Cities or the Childbirth Collective also has a great resource. We have a list at Bluma as well. So yeah, I think that was what I would say for people considering having a doula, and I've never heard of anyone regretting it. So
right, neither have I. Yeah, I've only heard of people raving about their experience. Like, I needed it.
Yeah, and I think two partners after are like I know my husband would write a blog about it because he was so grateful for our doula. And as far as birthing wisdom, or just a little love note to send to others, I think you're stronger than you know is probably whether that's like you have the natural birth you were craving, or whether that means you were able to make a decision changing the course of your birth plan that you didn't anticipate having to make.
Yeah.
Or, you had your baby early and you're having to navigate the NICU, and like our bodies just amaze me. They're so resilient and super strong. And also, like, there are people that want to support you too. So welcome that in as well.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I think people are going to love, especially like the doula tidbits, because I think it's something that, I tell people, I'm like, everyone I know is a doula, but that's our community in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. And a lot of people don't have access, but they're becoming more popular, more talked about. So I think that's
Yeah.
Thank you, love.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Louise.
Oh, say bye.
Bye, sweetheart.
Louise, say bye.
Bye-bye.